Welcome to Comedy is a Serious Business, How to Get Ahead in Comedy Writing. And we're so pleased that you could all join us on time. My name's Susie and I'm from the Writers Guild of Great Britain. We have had the pleasure of producing this event with the David Nobbs Memorial Trust, and I'll be handing you over to Mary shortly to tell you a little bit about that. We are really happy to be able to present this event at the Fringe in person. Yes, the person beside you is a real actual person. They're not a holograph or like don't poke them and stuff. They're not on a screen. We take our responsibility quite seriously to like nurture upcoming writers as well as representing established professionals. In the spirit of that, we have our lovely BSL interpreter Shorna in the slide there. And we're also going to be filming the whole event. None of your faces are going to be shown or anything, but you can see that we do have cameras at the back and at the side, so just making everybody aware that that is happening. There will be a chance to ask questions later. Let me think. We're going to have a little chance to gather and network downstairs afterwards. I will be there with all of my Writers Guild paraphernalia going, are you members? 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 As well as, you know, there's a chance to meet and greet and get to know each other a bit better. I will hand you over to Mary now, and it's lovely to see you all.
Hi everybody. No way not to block, sorry Lucy.
I'm delighted to be blocked.
Okay, hi everyone. We'll have a large group coming in about halfway through because they're slightly delayed, so if you can bear with us for that, that's great. My name is Mary O'Hara. I'm chair of the David Nobbs Memorial Trust. I'm here to represent the board of the trust and to tell you a little bit about us and what we do. But first of all, I want to thank the Writers Guild of Great Britain for supporting this event, the Edinburgh Film Festival, every person who's turned up on this panel because it's an amazing panel. And finally, a thanks to the Discworld Foundation, which is the funder that has helped us make this happen. And for those of you that don't know, that's the great writer Terry Pratchett's foundation. So it's wonderful that they're supporting this. So everyone who's helped work and make this event happen. So thank you so much, everybody. I don't know if you're familiar with the David Nobbs Memorial Trust, but we were founded after David died suddenly in 2015. David had a wonderful passion for supporting new writers and up-and-coming writers, and he'd often be found at events like this, hanging out in a corner with a huddle of people around them, talking about writing and why he loved it and why it mattered. And when he was a young writer, he always said that he would have loved to have had some money to set aside some time for his craft, and we took that as our impetus for the trust to try and set something up that would buy a little time for writers in their early stage career. And we've run the competition now every year since David died, and wow, the talent of people that come through it is really quite extraordinary. Now, David was a really gifted writer, but also just loved writers, so we are just so glad to have this event happening. Now, the final thing that I have to do today, and I have to get this absolutely right, is because today's the day we're announcing the winners of our annual comedy writing competition, which will be released to the press after this event. So, huge number of entries every year, and this year was no different. Absolutely wonderful. It was hard to choose. A lot of writers sifting through these scripts were, having trouble trying to get people to do the final winners list. So today we have two runners-up. Each runner-up gets £250 to buy them a little bit of time, and the runners-up are Charlie Dinkin, with their collection of sketches, and Benjamin Sutton for the script Hackers. And the overall winner this year, we're absolutely delighted, is Rhiannon Shaw, with her script Past Tense. Rhiannon gets quid, which will hopefully buy her half an hour, and time with one of the commissioners on our board. So enjoy this, because I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mary and Susie. I'm Lucy. I'm going to be hosting this discussion today, which I'm very excited about. Give me a quick cheer if you're currently writing something at the moment. Woo, me too. And give me a cheer if you feel you need some encouragement and inspiration. Me too. So that's what today is all about. And we've got a brilliant panel that I'm very excited to introduce you to. I shall start at the end. We have Stephen Canny, recently returned from the south of France, looking very tanned. And Stephen is he's an award-winning playwright. He's turned his hand to producing, directing, and I believe you're currently an executive at BBC Studios.
That is true.
He has worn more hats than the Queen, and he excels at all those things.
Love
It'll be
hats.
very interesting to see what he has to say. Then we have the marvellous Amna Saleem. And Amna is a writer from Glasgow, or Motherwell.
You're not supposed to tell people that.
Okay.
We just go with Glasgow.
That's our little secret. I didn't mention Motherwell. And she has written fiction, non-fiction, and if you haven't yet listened to her brilliant show, Beta Female, which is on the iPlayer, then you must, because it's a brilliant comedy all about sort of like identity and family expectations.
And lovely reviewer said it was a woman from the ethnic minorities. So if that doesn't sell it to you,
Oh, we love the critics, don't we? And it's also got a brilliant horrible auntie in it, which I always love. So that's Amna, and then we move on to the best hair in show business, Mr. Jack Rooke, who is again a playwright, has fronted documentaries about grief and mental health, and has created the amazing Channel 4 Big Boys. Yes, woo indeed, which is just joyful and saucy, and filmed in and around Harrow, where I live.
Yeah. I think next time we need to get you popping up somehow, but in like a really dark, sadistic way.
Yes,
Do you want to play Grinder Hookup? I think you'd be good at that.
Yes, right, I'm in. Excellent. And then finally we have the brilliant Lee Ridley, who I first met at this festival, and you will know him as the winner of Britain's Got Talent. His alias, of course, is Lost Voice Guy. He's amazing. It's a pleasure to have you here. He also has a brilliant sitcom on Radio 4 called Ability, which if you don't know it, you should. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is our panel. So I'm going to kick things off with a few questions, and then we're going to throw it open to all of you, because I'm sure you've got some brilliant questions to ask. So the first thing, I've hosted a few of these events with writers before, and I know the question that always comes up, that everybody wants to know, is about agents. Do you need one? How do you get one? And what can they do to help you? So I'm going to start with you, Steve.
I'm going to give really bad advice because I haven't got an agent, but I think you should. It's partly about having somebody early on to back you. And I think part of the process of getting work onto television, on stage, wherever it might be, is having people pushing your work. So the more bodies behind you, the more people pushing that work, the better. And early on I had an agent, and it was really, really just to get you into the room, into conversation. And also there's a little bit, when you see, experience work by a producer or a production company that you love, or that seems to connect to the work that you make, you should go and seek that producer out. And it's difficult. It's difficult to get a meeting. It's difficult to find the time or the place. You may well be geographically separated. An agent can do that for you. And I genuinely have experienced sort of that shift of writing letters, sending work in, sending your work to as many people as you possibly can, and then an agent doing that. And the difference is...
You're being fiddled with.
Yeah, that was an extraordinary thing. But the difference is huge, and it's really a significant step. And then later on, I think having a champion for your work nationally, internationally, is incredibly useful. And that we're in a market now where the movement from first script through to first series through to meetings with big streamers, it's really fluid, and an agent will manage that for you. And I think, much as I loathe giving away 10, 15, 20% of my income, I think it's really, really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you find? So now I presume you deal with agents from the other side as well, and has that given you an insight into the agent-client relationship?
Yeah, and I think that's probably reinforced that view. I think if I hadn't been a producer, I probably wouldn't have quite seen just how significant that is in terms of, and it's not about status, it really isn't. It's not, because your work comes as your work. I'll read your script, whether it's from an agent I know or whether it comes to me from another source. But it's more about just having the conversation, picking up, somebody chasing as well, somebody coming back a week later, 10 days later, and just saying, what did you think, picking up a conversation, and then talking about having an industry-based conversation about where it goes next, what the plan is. That stuff is much easier to shape with an agent in place.
Yeah, lovely. And so, Amna, what's your relationship with agents been?
No, it's so everything I've done is kind of backwards and very just feeling my way through. So tried to get an agent, no one was biting at all, and then I wrote something that people thought were good, and then suddenly agents were interested. But I made the mistake of being so thankful that an agent was interested in me that I signed with them without doing like proper due diligence. And that is to say that this person was wonderful and great, but it was just not a match, and I did not realise how important, like, that is a person you're going to have to spend so much time with, and I did not understand the reality of that. So I had signed with this big agency, and I was really excited, and it's just the most anticlimactic thing ever, because they had huge people, I was nothing, and they might not have meant to treat me that way, but that's certainly how I felt, and it just didn't feel like I was supported. So I made the incredibly torturous decision to find another agent who I then did move on to, and I'd already had the pilot for my BBC Radio 4 sitcom, I guess, commissioned. So that was very helpful for me, but doing all of that without an agent was really difficult for my producer. The wonderful Ed Morrish he was the relationship I wanted to have with an agent that I wasn't finding. So my next agent ended up turning up to the live reading of my radio play that we were acting out in the basement of our church, and I was in it because we didn't find someone, and it was just this way that it was like, oh my god, he's going to turn around and be like, actually, no thank you, I resent you. But that was also one of the best days of my life, because everyone laughed at the right time, they laughed so loud, and afterwards people were quoting my work to me. And I think I've been chasing that ever since, and now I understand why heroin is a thing. So I'm never going to try it, because that is already so addictive. But it just feels like it's all kind of downhill from there, because it was amazing. And this agency is much smaller, but I get a lot more time, and I was able to kind of navigate easier and actually understand what was happening. But it was kind of like, oh, I've gone from this big agency to a small one, no one's going to take me seriously. And as Stephen said, my work kind of spoke for itself, so it didn't actually, I mean, it does matter. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. It does matter, because I have been in LA and I understand how crazy it is. So it does matter, but when you're starting out and when you're kind of climbing your way up, I don't think it matters as much. But yeah, so I guess my takeaway is that it is really nice when an agent is interested in you, but that idea, it's like when you have to break up with someone that is so nice, so nice, also like taking your money, but so nice. And then you just have to be like, I'm really sorry, this isn't working. But as soon as I kind of moved over, it was, I think, doors didn't necessarily, I just felt more comfortable pushing through the doors, I guess, because I felt like there was a bit more support. So a lot of us do get that thing, it's like, oh, I should just be grateful, but really, it's the crumbs. You deserve to have a relationship, because they're making money off you. You are paying them. And it's like the government, we often forget that they work for us, but you wouldn't know it, right? So that is how you need to be with your agent, is like, this is a relationship that needs to kind of survive, and you need to be able to trust them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about getting the right personal fit, isn't it? And you're with Curtis Brown, aren't you?
My agent's a horrible, evil, capitalist. Actually, Rupert Murdoch is my agent. No, my agent, Kat, I've been with for like 6-7 years now. And she's sort of like, we have a very inappropriate agent-client relationship of sort of also being really good mates. And I've set her up with her boyfriend. It's really bad. Don't do it. Keep professional distance. No, it's not. She's brilliant, and I get on with her really well. And it's like, it is that balance of having pastoral support and someone who's sort of really rooting for you, but who you can also be like. So what I was thinking when you guys were chatting there is that I think the reason to get an agent is because everyone else has one. So if you don't have one, then you will be taken advantage of. And I know that sounds like really like dooms scary type thing, but it is just because like people are always going to try to, oh, this sounds really like disencouraging, I'm so sorry, but people are always going to try to pay you less. Yeah. People are always going to try to like undercut you or undersell you, or you know, you're like, everyone is lovely until it kind of gets to like the, you know, you must have had those emails where it's like, we would absolutely love you to travel across high seas and oceans and waters to join us for the prestigious blah, blah, blah. And you're like, yeah, I'd absolutely love to, but I wonder where the fee bit is. Is there a fee? Like, where's the bit? And then you're like, oh yeah, so you want me to sort of, you know, be on a gondola for no pounds.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we should, let's come back to that about what you should do and what you shouldn't do. Let's talk to Lee, because Lee, do you have different agents for different jobs?
I think it was very important to find the right agent, and that is why I waited as long as I did to get one. I think I'd been doing comedy for about 5 years until I signed with an agent. I'd had some interest before that, but I thought it was important not to rush into anything. In fact, I think I need to apply the same sort of thinking to my love life. Seriously though, I think it's very important to find someone who really understands you and your situation. For example, because I'm disabled, I have limits on how far I can push myself without making myself ill. And I knew I needed an agent who would appreciate that and who would look after me as a person, as well as a professional. Thankfully, I think I found someone like that in Andrew Roach.
Oh, Andrew Roach is fantastic. And that's sort of so interesting that across the board everyone has emphasised how much of a personal, you know, how like a romantic, we're not banging our agents, but it is kind of that, it is that important. So coming back to what you were saying, Jack, about, I think that as a emerging writer, it's so easy to be taken advantage of. And do you have any tips on how to draw those boundaries? Like, how do you say, no, I'm not going to do that for free, and what were you prepared to do for free?
I think it's a case of feedback. I think I'm going to roll with that now. That was a sign. Like I feel like throughout, wherever you are and wherever your position is as a writer, you should approach your peers and talk about money. I really believe in that, because I think that that's the only way that we have any agency or power to be like, okay, what are you getting for the same amount of work, and what are you getting? And like, if you share it, then you also help sort of dispel it. And there is also like such a, I know I sound like I'm gonna like wang on, but there's such a sort of like classism issue in the industry, because like I'd never had anybody in my family who was a writer or had done anything creative. So somebody coming to me and being like, we'll pay you £25 for 9 hours work, I was like, and if it's creative, of course I'll do it, that's my train, yeah. Like, and then I'd be like, yeah, no, like you're being taken the mickey out of. And that happened a lot in the start of my career. To be honest, sometimes it, you know, happens a bit now, but like at least have an agent to be like, okay, sometimes what's good about having an agent is it's someone who you can weigh up the pros and cons. If a job comes in and it isn't great money, but you can, at least you've got someone to go, but that might lead to that, and that's good for that, and I'll get good experience for that. And it's like, because, you know, there's getting paid, but there's also broadening your skill set and your credits and what you've done, and also just doing stuff you're going to enjoy. Yeah. So like, that's why I think it's so important to have one, so you can sound out those moments. And when somebody is trying to get you for free, you can be like, can you email them and be like, what's the fee? Because I find it really awkward. I find it so awkward to talk about money that I'd rather like Kat just be like, and what is there's not a fee, Jack is busy.
Yes.
Living his life.
It is very useful to have someone. Well, Annika Rice invented she was her own agent and put on a funny voice. So that is another thing you can think about is
so
if you can't get an agent, invent one. Just make up your own.
Full of challenges, that woman.
She's
just
amazing.
Loves a challenge.
Filthy as well.
Lucy, can I just jump in on that thing? Just because I totally agree with Jack that people will expect you to work for free too frequently. And it will seem invasive and it will seem wrong at times. However, I think there's pragmatism as well. And there's something about talking about bodies behind your work. There's also sort of a body of work which you need to have made, and you need to have a sort of convincing argument for why your work demands attention. And I've been doing this in and around comedy and comedy writing for 30 years, and I'm still in that position where this year I wrote a spec script because I really want that project to happen. People were being a bit reticent about the commission. I got involved with a couple of producers talking about the work. This is for stage, this is comedy for theatre, and I got to a point where I just thought I should write it. Like, we should just write it. So we spent a year essentially writing the script that we wanted to do, and it will be going on February, March of next year, and then a tour. But it was a spec script essentially because I couldn't get people to part with money at that early stage. So that was a pragmatic decision that I'd taken, which just moved that project on a bit. And I totally agree. You know, if you're feeling uncomfortable about people taking the piss with your time or your energy or your creativity, don't do it. But if you can see a pragmatic reason for why it's going to help you in the end and help your work, then do it.
And as someone who commissions things, I mean, how do you feel about writers? How do you strike that balance, I suppose, between asking enough but not too much?
It's a constant source of frustration, difficulty. There's not enough money in development now. And in 10 years that I've been working in television, each year it's gone down. And about 5 years ago, you could see a real drop, like off a cliff. People are not parting with cash for scripts in the way that they did. However, there is still money, and I think that's another thing about an agent, you know, knowing who has got little pots of development money, who is able to commission. But ultimately, if an idea is good, we part with money for a treatment, which is only a little bit of money, obviously 10% of your script fee. And then if you've got a full treatment, which you've worked with a producer and has picked up an option, you've got a shared interest. It's in both of your interests then to push this work and get it to script and then get it out to broadcasters. And so I'm not pretending that I'm perfect at it by any means, but every day there's a moment where you go, are we asking too much? Is this now taking the piss out of somebody else? Or somebody who's at a vulnerable point in their career where they're working full-time, they've got a good idea, but it's where do they find the energy and the time? If you can pay for a week of their time, that will make a significant difference. So those are the conversations we're in, on a daily basis. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, Amna, about, so David Nobbs, obviously we're here, he was known as a mentor to aspiring writers, and how important do you think it is to have those kind of figures? Have you had anyone who has helped and assisted you along the way?
Yes. I've had people big and small it's hard to... So
Ed Morris obviously has been a really key figure.
I feel so sorry for him. Basically, I was just so annoying on Twitter, and Ed, for some reason, was just like, you're funny, and I was like, I know, thank you. And then he took a chance, and then he email saying you have a week to write a pilot. And I was like, that must be normal. Great, a week to write a pilot. So I did it, and then it did actually get commissioned. But Ed had been following me it wasn't just like he just saw me one day. It was more that like he had been following me for a while. I was also in journalism at the time, and kind of still are, and it was, as you know, everything is on fire. So it was a lot of my kind of tweets were commentary on just the fire and things that were happening. In what I was hoping was like a funny-ish way, and then you had like Mark Ruffalo getting involved, and suddenly were people like, oh, who's she? Why is Mark Ruffalo retweeting her? And it was like it took the Hulk to retweet me for anyone to pay attention. So it was just really, really strange. But no, yeah, Ed
Morris and Mark Ruffalo, those are two. Two of the biggest names. That's amazing. I mean, I suppose that does lead us on to social media and how important that is.
No, it really is. It's awful. Like, I've had to come off it because people are, first of all, there are just too many dick pics. Like, I have no desire to see anyone's, but mine's always like, there's like a dick pic and then it'll be like, die terrorist, and I'm just like, wow, that's a really creative way to bring all of those things together. You should be in a writer's room, like that's really good. And then it just like, I mean, I've seen too many dicks and I just can't, and there's so many other things as well, because if you are a minority, people constantly treat you as one, but then they also treat you as an ambassador, and then they'll do this thing where they build you up and then they'll break you down because apparently you've gotten too high. And a way for me to handle that was just to get off, because they can build me up and break me down and I don't have to see it, because all I have to do is concentrate on my work. But I would be lying if it would be disingenuous for me to say that it didn't help at the beginning, but I would say use it, don't let it use you, because it is soul sucking and so many negative people are out there just waiting for you. They won't do anything, they won't write a spec script, they won't do anything, but they are angry at you for taking their spot. It is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So I just, well,
it's social media it's bitterness in your pocket, isn't it, a lot of the time. Quite interesting as well, they're talking about, I think it is maybe different for women on social media, and sort of thinking about inclusivity. I was going to ask Lee, I think that the television and radio industries are getting more inclusive, but what do you think radio, TV and film could do to improve access for writers from previously underrepresented backgrounds? Do you? It's I do sort of think that it feels like we're moving in the right direction.
I didn't start doing stand-up comedy to become a role model for other people, but I appreciate that I have inadvertently become one. I don't really see myself as an inspiration or anything. I'm just a bloke trying to get on with his life. I'm not doing anything special, but I don't mind if other people see me as a role model. If it helps encourage them to follow their dreams and gives them hope for the future, then I'm not going to complain about that. But much more needs to be done. It would be nice for every disabled child to realize they have the opportunity to do whatever they like when they grow up. But they'll only believe this if they see other people in a similar situation being successful. That's why we need to see more disabled people on our screens and working in the background. One day, I hope that no disabled person will be labelled as an inspiration just for getting on with their lives and trying to achieve their goals. And I hope that one day we're just accepted for who we are as people, rather than being defined by our disability. Because only then will disabled people feel fully a part of society.
Bravo, absolutely. But speaking of inspiration, I feel it's time to open the floor to your questions So if anyone has anything that they would like to ask to any or all of the panel, then feel free to give me a shout now. I know it's very nerve-wracking speaking in public. Anyone? Yes, there we go. Someone at the back.
Do you laugh at your own work when you're writing?
Jack.
Yeah. That's it. End of answer. It's embarrassing. My flatmates will like watch me and I'll start writing something and I'll be like laughing and they're like, is it something that you've done? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, it's a really good joke about Ravita. Something like that. Yeah.
And is it mostly like the gags that get you? What are the sort of breakthrough moments, I suppose, when you're writing where you go, gosh, I'm really enjoying this?
I think because I sort of think that I try to start everything with character. So I think like, and I think leading with character is always the best way because they are ultimately like the people that viewers love or people who audiences respond to. So for me with Big Boys, like I love writing Jules, who's Katie Wicks's character, because it just like exists in my head. And sometimes like I was recently talking to a room of writers and I was talking about like procrastination and what it means to feel stuck. And I was like, this happens to me all the time. And what I try to use with that time is to maybe write something that isn't a script, but is like supporting material. So sometimes if I'm really, really stuck or I'm trying to think of jokes for someone, I'll write like Jules writing a complaint letter to the council. And it's just like, so I can get into like the tone and into the sort of like way in which I know that she would speak. And I love like, because she always starts sentences in like really sort of like bizarre ways. And like, and I think the other day I just wrote a sentence that was, well. I'm here to write about the well. And just like trying to like figure out like ways in which people talk. Sometimes it's nice to do those other little things like how they would be in life that isn't scripted stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it frees you up to just kind of think, I'm not, because sometimes if you're trying to concentrate too much on the script in front of you, it can be quite...
Yeah, and it means that you don't feel like you've not got the shame of procrastination, because you're like, well, at least I wrote this thing that one day might be useful.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I will just tweet all of Jules's letters that I've written.
Well, that's it now. It's all supporting material.
It
can all go online.
There's nothing. Be a book. Am I right?
Yeah, nothing's ever wasted. Amna, how are your...
Oh no, yeah, I crack myself up, even if no one else does. But I don't know. I'm very character heavy as well, so I start feeling like these people are real, and then I kind of write a scene, or as I'm writing a scene, I can see it play out in my head. So then the characters are in my head having this kind of witty, or what I think is witty, like repartee, and I'm just sitting there giggling, and then like usually a sibling will be like, "You're so weird, like what is wrong with you?" But then the flip has happened because I'm currently writing, for some reason, a thriller, and then sometimes I'll be sitting and and apparently my face goes through, it contorts through all these emotions, and I'll be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" And it's just because it's playing out over here, but it's coming out here, and I'm like, and then they do this. So yeah, but I do the same. There's like if I'm a bit stuck and the procrastination, shame, and the whole ADHD, not making things easy. I do like sometimes, for instance, the last time I did the ice cream machine in McDonald's is always out when you want it. So the characters had to all respond to that. One would be fine with it, one would be so indignant because it always happens and why just what's the point of having it? So it really helps kind of build the story up, even though that had nothing to do with the episode. But yeah, I think you need. It goes from laughing at your own jokes to being like, this is the worst thing I've ever written. Please just drop me in a well. And it's just not fun.
Yes, a lot of emotions involved in writing. You must never play poker, clearly, because your face is way too expressive.
I do a lot of things. It's just
Stephen, how do you approach things?
Yeah, waves of... I'm quite structure heavy, so it takes a long time to get to a point where it's actually even remotely funny. So it's I do a lot of story work and structure, and that's not remotely funny. Yes. It's plotted, it's the bits and pieces of it all. Then there's a lovely one draft, which is the first time you've written the funny stuff for those people, and it can be really lovely, that thing of just being buoyed along by the laughter of it. And then, as Amna suggests, then there's a 6-month period of hell and hatred. And then for theatre, which is where I write comedy, I do then get the joy of laughing, because you sit in a room full of people, if you're lucky. I mean, and just after lockdown, one play that I'd written was revived, and I went into a room. It's very weird. People were masked still and dotted around and everything. But to be in a room where people were laughing at the words that I'd written, it would be very weird if you didn't laugh yourself. So it's infectious, and at that point, that's the delight, and that's a real release for the play as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it is always quite nice to have other people read your work. If you can get over the terror of that, it can be quite useful.
Yeah, definitely.
To hear it. Well, Lee, what about you? Do you laugh at your own jokes?
Definitely, because I find myself very funny. Why else would I have started doing stand-up comedy? The worst thing is when I start laughing at my jokes on stage. People must think I have a really massive ego, but I'm just a bit weird. That's why I think I enjoy stand-up more than writing. I think I need that instant reaction to validate my life choices.
Yes, I think that's why a lot of us got into stand-up. Well, we have our late coat. It's all right. You don't need to crouch. I see. Thank you.
Off the back of that, I also think like there's something about knowing that when you're writing your own stuff in comedy, you can really find it funny and really be in the moment. And then when we did the first read through for Big Boys, I sat on this Zoom call whilst everyone was doing it, and honest to God, I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever heard being read back to me. And as the episodes were going on, people in the private chat on Zoom being like, Jack, smile, look encouraging, look happy, and I was sat like, well, that doesn't work. Wow, that's something that will have to change. And then it was fine. And I actually think like the magic of comedy writing, or the brilliance of it, is that actually you can have so many people tell you that's really funny, that's great, or that's not very good, blah blah blah, until it actually like comes out or is in front of an audience, whether that's viewers or listeners or people and stuff like a live audience, like until you actually deliver it, you just don't know. And I've learned that's the most exciting part of it. It's that like I've seen people work on projects where like I can tell loads of money's been pumped behind it, and everyone's like, well, this is a dead set. It's got this person and this person and this person, and I've like gone to the screening and been like, fuck me, that was dull. Really boring. And vice versa. So like,
Oh, there's huge surprises, aren't there? I remember one of my friends, there was a film called Sex Lives of the Potato Men, I don't know if you remember that, and my friend read that script and he was in it and he was like, this is the funniest thing I have ever read.
Oh dear.
And it came out and it was not received as such.
No, it was not.
Have you developed an instinct, do you think now, Stephen, for what's going to...
No, God no, I don't know anything. I do, actually, that makes me think, what Jack was just talking about, actually, that joy of the moment, that's the weird chemistry experiment, which everything we've talked about so far, the one thing you can do nothing about is that the final chemistry of it all. So you do all of the work, you do everything you can, and ultimately if you can't get the right person, or if you get a person that is unexpected, it will change, the chemistry experiment shifts immediately, and that's the glorious thing. So I think I have I think I've got a sense of what will work in what form and where there may be an audience for it. But that chemistry experience, I mean, it's really mad, and the number of variables in it and in that process are really terrifying when you
have to be lucky.
reflect. Yeah, lucky. I mean, luck certainly comes into it. Yeah.
Oh, I was like once asked to leave the kind of set because I couldn't stop laughing at my own jokes. But it was just because before the read through we were all laughing, but as they were going in to actually do it, I thought of a better joke. So I was just constantly just like, no, that's crap now, like do this one, because it was so fresh and just came out. It was like, I still thought it was hilarious. Yeah. And it was like, okay, and Ed was just like, outside. That's fine. But it's just so exciting. Again, back to the heroin thing. I mean, these are all new, so this is about heroin.
Coded.
It's an intervention, that's what this is.
Back to chasing that high, it is the laughter, and when the actors are the chemistry and they're vibing and they're laughing at what you've said. And I think something I've really noticed is because Beta Female has most of the actors are also British Asian, there are so many, I wouldn't say they're inside jokes if there's context, but they will laugh at something that I have had a double meaning to, because it might be like relevant in South Asian culture but also relevant in kind of like British culture, and then they'll stop and just be like, I see what you did there, and I'm just like, yes, I'm very clever, thank you. And then it's just like, it's this whole ego thing is like, your ego kind of is like, oh, everyone's laughing and it's a helium balloon and it's spilling, and then all of a sudden something doesn't land and you're just like, oh, I should just die now. Okay, this is fine. So
we do take it very personally. We do. Well, that was a brilliant first question, by the way. Thank you. All of that from Do You Laugh at Your Own Jokes? It's. Would anyone else like to venture a question? There's someone in a cap at the back there.
It's a question for Steve. Sorry to single you out. You mentioned with your experience in producing how sort of enthusiasm encourages you to be willing to read, and I'm wondering where persistent becomes annoying.
Yeah, good question.
It's a great question.
Again, there's no rule in that, but if you're phoning someone every day, you're probably going too far. If you're phoning or emailing every week, you're probably still going too far. Fortnightly feels all right. There's a lag of work. Our diaries are full. The first month of something being in with me, it's really difficult to find the space. If beyond that, then you do need then somebody just being enthusiastic, and it depends on tone. If you feel like you're being told off, that's quite bad. If you're feeling like you're being encouraged to read something that's going to be brilliant, then that's great.
It's quite good as well, I think, if you have like updates on. So I've had projects in where I've been like, oh God, I can't bother them again. Yeah. But then I'll be like, I've also done this thing, just so you know. So finding a way of do exactly that.
Yeah, I agree.
How persistent have you been, Jack?
Me? Oh. I think. Well, I've had to be quite persistent because Big Words got cancelled twice before it got commissioned. So it got like, oh yeah, we're going to do it. Oh no. And then we are making it, and then COVID happened, and then it was like, we're not anymore. And then so I've had to be persistent. Third time lucky.
So how far had you got? Talk us through the process. Did you start off with just a pilot episode written?
It started as a pilot with the BBC, and we made the pilot, and I just don't think that I think they were like, what have we made? I really think, I don't know, because I think the commissioners didn't like it so much that they stopped talking to me. We really don't know what this is that we've made.
Where had they intended? Was it BBC?
BBC Three.
Okay.
And I think it was, I think they sort of forgot I was gay, and I think it was a real surprise to them that they had something that had like a gayness to it. I think they were like, oh, we just thought he had like a dead dad. We thought that was the shtick. But yeah, alas. And then they were sort of quite interested for a bit, and then it was, and then the producer, who is like sort of my Ed Morris, she really is. I do think the most important relationship is the producer when you're a writer, because there's somebody who you need to really trust and really bounce ideas off with, and I also think it really helps if you find your producer funny. Like John Petrie, who produced the pilot of Big Boys, I just like found him like a weirdo. Like he was like a fun little weirdo. He's got great taste. And so then we kind of took it from there to E4, and then E4 were like, we'll make it. I mean, this all took years. So this is like, it took 5 years.
Wow,
it took a really long time. But yeah, so I had to be quite persistent, and then we finally got it off at Channel 4. And yeah, it just requires you to have a little bit of blind faith and like complete delusion, really. You kind of have to be sort of delusionally. You have to be delusional because it's such an odd. If it's your dream, then you've got to be like delusionally. You've got to want it type thing. So. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being a bit delusional. Am I right?
Oh God, you couldn't get up in the morning if you weren't a bit delusional,
Not
could
with
you?
this
Especially at the moment. But also there is you always find with writers, once they have a big success, then often they go back to their passion project, don't they? So there's always hope for every idea, isn't there? Have you seen things revived?
Yeah, I think actually for your mental well-being as well, that thing of being able to put something away and know that in 2 years, 3 years, it's not going to disappear. I think it's a really, really healthy thing. And a play that I wrote about 6 or 7 years ago, I think has a very good chance of getting an outing in the next couple of years. And that bit where you just go, look, I'm going to stop. It's not for now. It's not getting there, or it's not chiming with people, or it's not working for some reason. Doesn't mean it's not going to get there.
Yes.
And I think for your well-being, knowing that that's not a total rejection of I mean, obviously, if it's not very good and you've come back to it 6 months later and you read it, think, Christ, what was I thinking? Then it's gone. But if it's your, if it's a thing of quality that you really believe in, yeah, stick it in the bottom drawer and come back.
Yeah, everything has its time.
Yeah.
Lee, I see you've been typing away.
Now I feel like I'm not working hard enough because I don't think I've been very persistent. I think that's something to do with not being very self-motivated. I definitely think you need a method to get your work done, because I'm too lazy to do anything without forcing myself to do it.
Yeah, deadlines are your friend. I think that's we all know that, right? That self-imposed.
At all.
Pardon?
There's that famous quote that's like, I love the sound of deadlines as they whoosh past me, which is very relatable.
And in the same way that everyone always tells me to be places half an hour earlier than I actually need to be there. Yeah. It's a lot of writers are like this, I think. And I always say to my agent, if there's a deadline, can you move it forward and just lie to me? I like being lied to. So
your HMRC tax deadline is tomorrow.
Lovely question there. Anyone else fancy? Oh yes, we've got over here.
Yeah, I'd just like to get back to Jack's point about relationship with a producer. I've become aware of the last several months there's an MA comedy writing at Falmouth University part-time, run by Simon Nichols, ex-BBC producer. The Chancellor at the uni is Dawn French as well. And I just wondered if it's not cheap to do the course at all, but he has developed it. It's been going for 2 years now, really trying to get people going into the industry. It's that kind of a course. And for those with the money and the determination, it seems like a nice opportunity for anyone that didn't know about it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I hadn't known about it, but I do now.
For the benefit of the cameras, just in case they didn't pick all of that up, I will say that we're talking about a Falmouth, is it an MA, did you say, in comedy writing, which Simon Nichols, ex-BBC, part-time over 2 years, online. There's about 200 students. This must feel weird for you.
Someone's doing it.
Oh, hello.
I'm on it as well.
Okay.
I've just finished that course.
Oh, great. So somebody has just finished that course.
I've had to get a deadline extension.
She's got a deadline extension.
You're in great stead. Yay!
That's good. I've just started. So.
Yeah, great. Well, we are going to drift down to the cafe for nibbles and chat. It sounds like I'm hosting a sex party. So we can, yeah, that would be great to get your insights on that and whether. I suppose maybe I'm going to turn to you, Stephen. Do you think that investment in your career is good? Simon knows comedy through and through and is a thoroughly decent person. It's difficult. I couldn't endorse courses or not, but I know that taking that time out and that financial investment in shifts your thinking, and anything that shifts your thinking from wanting to do something to doing something has to be a good thing.
And you're taking your comedy seriously.
Yes, it is a little bit of that, yeah. And also there's something about the connections that the people on the courses that you meet and you talk to, but also Simon and his connections, those have to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Contrastly to that, when I started out, I lived in loads of property guardianships because I had no money at all, and just gigged above pubs all the time, and I do. What the great thing about comedy more than any other genre of TV and film is that comedy producers will be like both like at the Fringe and like teaching on an MA course, and also above like a pub in like, you know, Windsor or something like that. Like, that's the nicest thing about this genre. I think it's almost a bit more democratic. So like, you know, if you can't do that, I mean, this is the thing, that there's no right or wrong way to do it. That's what I've always sort of found with people. And also you being like, I need to be more motivated. I'm like, you're just too successful. You already started really high. So
Yes. You're busy.
Yeah, you're booked and blessed.
Yes. Yes, great point. Shall we take that? Yes.
Jack, what you were talking about with your producer, it's not really a question, it's just I'd like to hear your thoughts. Because I'm working with a producer or something for a radio show, and he's saying, well, the commissioners are looking for this, this and this, and the parameters and the slots are very narrow and don't really fit what we're working or what I've written. And now my producer's asking me to change and shape things in a certain way in order for it to fit the slot, which I will do because I trust him and he makes me laugh and he's great to work with. But it's slightly going off what the kind of ethos of what my whole thing is about, and how do these commissions evolve and change, and how do you say, well, actually this is really funny and it doesn't fit into your slots of we want this and times. And I'd love to know the way the commissioning process works, particularly for radio, because that's what I'm working on, but I'm sure it's the same thing.
That's very good point. So sort of how much do you sort of contort your vision to suit what's sort of commercially viable? I mean, when do you stand up for yourself? Because I find that very difficult to assert my vision. Who would like to take that one first?
So I've been in similar situations. So kind of early days, it would be nice to get commissioners' attention and you'd pitch something, and then for me the common thing was like, but what if we put her in an arranged marriage? But what if she's in love with a terrorist? But what if like she has to go to Pakistan and she can't come back again? And like, none of that, that isn't something that I can speak to. I'm aware that it happens, but it's interesting that you're assuming that is all I can write about. So I had to then turn down things that probably would have made me more successful in the long run, because my ego is too big to have my name on something that I hate or that doesn't read true to me, and also I don't want other Asian writers to feel like that's all they can do as well. So when Ed came around, Ed thinks he's funny, and that also helps him a producer. He was basically, he did the thing where he's like, this is the BBC, and this is kind of what we need to do, and we love the BBC, but they never really know what they want until it's there, and then they suddenly think that they discover it. Anyway, so I then did do something where the pilot, I used an old trope because it's very Radio 4, so I used an old trope where the Scottish Pakistani woman is bringing home her white boyfriend, and it's supposed to be like, oh no, it's going to be a big issue, but that doesn't turn out to be the issue, because I still had to give up a part of myself, because I'm just, you kind of have to keep your integrity, but you have to give a little bit. You're not like this amazing, like effusive artist who's too pure for anything. You do have to compromise, and that was my compromise. And then by the second season, I wrote them out. So it worked. But it is just that thing that there has to be a line that you're not willing to cross, and you do need to be willing to compromise. But at the end of the day, that is your name. And if it's going to be a stepping stone, great. But if it's actually going to be something it's just too much and it isn't your thing anymore, I don't want to say like turn it down or don't do it, but you have to believe in yourself enough to believe the thing that you are writing is worth being seen fully. And I will say that it took me, again, longer than I wish for me to be able to start being able to write about British Asian women as if we're just women. We're not just wives, we're not just oppressed, we're not just anything, we're just like messy bitches just trying to live. And that's great, because I'm able to write those now and inject what I want into it. But I swear to God, 3 to 5 years ago, every note was, don't want her mum and dad to disown her. And I'm like, well, my parents haven't disowned me yet, but sure. And it was just, it's horrible. But had I given up, probably wouldn't be on this panel because I wouldn't have stuck through the industry, because that for me would have been personally demoralising. So I don't know if that's helpful, but compromise but don't give up all of your integrity.
Draw your line in the sand, I guess.
It is your name.
There's also, I think, all of that's absolutely right. And the bit that commissioners want is what's uniquely you. And I think it's really easy to lose sight of that. So all of those commissioning guidelines exist for a reason, which is its general tone, language, the sort of areas that they're interested in. But they do, as Amna says, they're effectively, they don't know what they want until they see it. And it's about the uniqueness of your worldview. And I know sitting here, it's easy to say that they want a distinctive, rare voice, but they do. Now, they won't always ask for it in that way, but that's exactly what commissioners want. They want something unique. So my concern is if you spend too long thinking, right, it's got to be and look and sound like this, it's no longer got that unique quality.
That's what I think is happening.
And so the alarm bells at that point would suggest that you start to back away from making those changes. And if you're rejected for something you love, that's hard. If you're rejected with something that you did because you thought the commissioner wanted it, that's unbearable.
You have to be the most you that you can be, that no one else could have written what you wrote, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, for my whole life I've been told I'm too much, blah blah blah, but funnily enough that now turns out to be one of my, I suck at structure. Stephen probably knows this because he's probably read a bad script of mine. I suck at structure, but I'm very lucky that my dialogue is my strength, it's my strong point. And controversial, but structure can be taught, but dialogue is hard. Sometimes you've either got it or you don't, but it can be learned. I mean, I've improved, but it is leaning into the uniqueness of you, because if Phoebe Waller-Bridge can just write what I'm writing, then what am I doing? I mean, she can write everything, but you know what I mean, like, you have to carve it out for yourself, and sometimes that isn't always going to work out in the first go.
And if you are instinctively feeling uncomfortable, then, listening to that is probably quite wise, isn't it? Lee, did you have something that you wanted to say?
I think it's also important to remember that what people want change all the time. One commissioner might want one thing, but the next commissioner might want something else. I've even hit the same people who change their minds over a few months. So I guess you have to make a judgment call about how much you feel like changing your own work, because it might work somewhere else instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that's been helpful. That's a great question. I think we're sort of going to wrap up the formal part of this, but I did want to ask just one final question of our panellists, which is, if you could sort of go back in time and meet yourself again at the beginning of your career, is there anything that you would do differently?
Not write so many terrible plays, probably. And I think that's, actually I wouldn't do that. I spent my 20s writing and rewriting and writing, but really, not really knowing I didn't come from any background that had any writing or comedy or drama or anything in it. So I found, in my 20s, I found everything out by just doing. And I suppose if I was going to give myself any advice at 2021 is, don't be afraid of that. You're not going to get paid for it. I didn't get paid for anything until I was about 29, I think. Maybe, yeah. I think I got my first commission at 29. So it's 8 years of unpaid labour, which I know, it's very familiar for a lot of people. But that's okay. When they start to come, when the commissions come in, and when you're working on 2-3 projects at a time, all of that legwork, all of that, and I was a terrible actor, but acted on the fringe because I thought I should try it and see what that felt like. I directed a lot of work, I did lighting, I did stage management, I did anything I could, and I think probably I had no one who said that's a good idea, but I did it because I felt like I was learning something. It's like an apprenticeship, and I think, yeah, I'd say go and carry on doing that for a bit longer. It was all right.
Sort of, yeah, well, and your sort of versatility and fearlessness, I suppose, that you cultivated then, really useful. Amna?
Continuing what Stephen said, but also I think, so if you don't come from the most traditional backgrounds, and it is a bit tricky, it's going to sound so trite, but it turned out like the biggest problem was me, because I suffer, and I to a less extent I suffer with like extreme imposter syndrome, and it just makes me procrastinate, it makes me just feel very not willing to push I'll push myself hard enough, but then I feel like I'm taking up space and time. Like being asked to do this, I'm still like, me? And then there's just Mary, it's like, no, of course. And it's so lovely that Mary thought of me, but it gets to a point where imposter syndrome isn't just like, it's not just debilitating, but you're really doing yourself a disservice, because if you have to believe in yourself, which is so annoying to say, but if I had just went back to my younger self and just said, why do you care what everyone else thinks? Like, why do, like, sure, like, your parents aren't into this, and like, everyone wants you to be like a terrorist loving arranged marriage or something, but like, I had that voice back then, and I just wish that I had believed in myself enough to really, really go for it. But I didn't, and it just took a bit longer for me to be like, oh, it's okay to be who I am and have this voice. But imposter syndrome is like, it's a struggle, and you have to constantly just kind of keep building yourself back up. And then you do build yourself up, and then you audition for the role of yourself in the sitcom you wrote about you, and you don't get it. And then, and then you're just like, okay, reality check, that's good. Put me back to where I belong. But not that I'm saying that any of you are your problem, but I think especially as women, we think we have to wait for our chance, and don't. Just take it, because you deserve to be in the room, and you don't want to do what I did and kind of, I was a receptionist at BuzzFeed for my sins, and I just watched all these people fly past me, and it turned out they weren't more talented than me, they just thought they were, or, I mean, that's horrible, they were nice people. It was just that way that I got to look at from the outside in, and then it was just like, well, why not me? Like that Mindy Kaling thing, she has the book, Why Not Me, and it's the most accurate thing ever, because why not me? But if you do also suffer from imposter syndrome or anything like that, it's like going, you just have to do it, because if you don't, the regret is harder, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of nodding around the room, a lot of imposter syndrome in the area. Jack, what do you think?
Come to me. And I think I should have all got it sooner, quite frankly. No, I had to wait too long, I'll be honest. I feel like, yeah, maybe the only sort of stuff that I really regret, like, is perhaps at times approaching it too emotionally, you know. The stuff that I have made has always been very autobiographical, very, you know, treads that like ego narcissism line that we've all been talking about. And sometimes you can forget that actually it's just telly, it's just job, it's just writing. But I think it's because I feel so lucky that I've been able to work within the creative industries. And like, you know, when I was a kid, my dad was a black cab driver, and he just hated it. And he would just be like, get a job you love, and blah, blah, blah. So, and I sort of always just had that in my head. So I feel very emotional attachment to writing. And I think it's about having a healthy balance. It's like not being too, you know, being able to take the rejections well, and being able to take the highs well, and not reading into everything in a really sort of too heavy level type thing. Sort of looking after yourself. I think the more that you can like objectively see it as like writing is my job, then the better it is. And I do think like I have to speak to you, Susie, because I'm actually not a member of the Writers' Union. I know.
She's keeled over at the back there.
Oh my God, I killed Susie. Wow. But I do feel like doing stuff like that is more of like an objective thing, because I'm still like, I sort of forget that I write for a living. Yeah. And like speaking to your peers and sharing stuff and being like really open and rooting for one another, like is the only way that you get longevity in being a writer. Yeah. I think.
And I think you're absolutely right. And going back to what you said as well, always talk to people about money as well.
Yeah.
Get your friends.
I've been finding out how everyone's getting paid. It's really fun. Recently I've been doing it a lot and just going up to them and being like, Aisling B, how much do you get?
We'll tell you downstairs, not on camera.
I won't, Aisling, I promise.
So, Lee, what would you say to that?
I would definitely worry a lot less about what other people thought about my writing. Of course, it's important to listen to other people's opinions and take that on board. But I think I used to be bothered about that way too much. Instead of writing what I wanted to write, I would write what I thought other people wanted me to write. As long as you're enjoying the writing process, it shouldn't matter what other people think. It's important to remember that making mistakes are a part of that process, because that's the only way you're going to develop as a good writer. Also, this has been mentioned already, but I'd also tell myself that the imposter syndrome never goes away, because I still can't quite believe I get to do this for a living. The feeling that someone will say that I don't belong here and take it all away is definitely always going to be there.
Yeah, so I mean, the absolute lesson here is believe in yourselves, guys.